Hi! Today I just wanted to talk to you guys about some stuff that I have been working with in my reading and my English 409 class. We were talking about literacy and the different types of literacy, and apparently they keep redefining what being literate means. And in my reading class we were going over the different types, and like the definition that we were provided with there was pretty much the same over the last I don't know, 500 years. It was pretty pathetic. It was can sign their name, and then it was can read at age 10 or age 14, and they just kind of like pushed it back, and they never talked about like the quality or the depth of the reading or how they were reading, which now comes back to this article that we were exposed to for my English 409 class. We're talking about performative literacy, the habits of mind of highly literate readers, and it was a article by Sheridan Blau. Pronunciation is unimportant, but that is actually one of the types of literacy. Now that I think about it, they talked about how literacy has continued to evolve over time, especially in schools, and it went from signature literacy to recording literacy, where you could just write down like small amounts of text or documents, and you could read and spell common words, common simple words. And then there was recitational literacy, which you would be able to recite really important patriotical like poems or verses or speeches or things like that, and that was a form of literacy. And then there was there was analytical literacy, which shifted the type of reading between oral to silent, and it kind of put more pressure on the individual to understand within themselves and not to really communicate with others, which I thought was interesting. And it had more to do with like comprehension and analysis. The latest form that they were talking about is critical analysis, and that was when you were able to look at a text and come up with your own interpretation of it. And I thought that was really, really fascinating, because for so much of time we've just been pushed and interested in finding out the right like interpretation of a text. Like in that poem that we discussed in class, where he's talking about tying up and torturing the poem because we just want to know what it actually means and not anything that we want it to mean for ourselves. We want to know what the author meant for it to say, which I thought was really fascinating, because we can't just appreciate the beauty of what this poem is saying. We have to fight and fight and fight with it and hate poetry and hate reading, because sometimes it's hard because we don't understand right away. That is something else that they talked about in this article. It talked about the different tools in creating critical literacy in our students, and it talked about how reading is a process and how we have to break it down, and that it's uncomfortable and it's painful at times because you can't understand things right away or clearly even. And it was talked about being able to deal with paradoxes or ambiguity, and just being like, okay, it's unclear for right now, I can make it through this, and you have to be persistent going through the reading, which is really cool. And let me see something else that was important. Oh, and then I talked about metacognition and how this is a really good way to measure like the skill of a reader, is if they are paying attention to how they are thinking about things, and if they know, wait, I've become confused, I need to go back and read this thing, I need to go back and think about this again, I need to just step back for a minute and think. It's just really important to be able to utilize these kinds of skills as readers and as students, especially because we are forcing them so much to just consume all of this knowledge And so often we just don't really prepare them for dealing with it on their own, because we do want to encourage students to go out and read books and to go out and think deeply about things beyond video games and TV shows and the boy or the girl that may like you. We want them to think about educational things, and if they are not prepared to be competent, critical thinkers, then they're not going to be able to get past the Dr. Seuss books. They aren't going to be able to pick up an actual piece of literature and understand it, because we have never trained them to. So those are my thoughts on literacy right now and how we need to encourage it. See ya.